Hi, my name is Carla Christopher, and I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging consultant, which means I get to talk about things that I'm really passionate about. People living with disabilities, folks from different countries who speak different languages, people that have different skin tones, and my very personal favorite, because I am a member of the Rainbow Tribe, but LGBTQIA2S plus issues and how to be supportive, how to better understand how we can all live together and take care of each other, actually knowing what we're talking about. So that's a lot of letters, and I promise we'll get back to that later. But over the next 30 minutes or so, I wanted to share with you some of the information that when I was growing up as a queer teen, I wished my teachers, parents of my friends, and a lot of my classmates knew. I'm not asking you to agree with anything. There's lots of different definitions and lots of different ways that individuals find their own truth. So I can only tell you my version, the version that is used in a lot of the consultations I do, working with libraries and nonprofit organizations, foster care programs, companies, organizations, churches, and faith communities, and other schools. But please remember that the way an individual defines themselves, well, that's the person who knows them best. So if someone says, or if you say, hey, that's not actually how I think about it, that's okay. That's why we learn and practice asking first. What pronouns do you use? What's your preferred name? How do you describe the people that you're attracted to or like spending time around? And as we evolve and learn to better understand things, I hope we'll be able to ask better questions. But for now, let's dive in. I want to introduce you to a very special friend of mine, and that is my genderbread person. What is a genderbread person? Well, have you ever met the gingerbread man or heard rhymes about them? Somebody took a spin on that and created this. It's a way to explain the difference between many of the identities that we have that folks can get mixed up behind. So, for example, the sex that I was assigned at birth, that has to do with my chromosomes. It has to do with my genitalia, what's on my body. And the sex I was assigned at birth is female. So we generally have three sexes that folks are assigned at birth. Female has breasts, a vagina, sometimes ovaries and uterus. And then there's male, has a flatter chest, a penis, testes. These are just biological words, the same as arm and leg. But they help folks know, I guess, doctors and parents, what a need that a child might have. It's helpful for things like toilet training, comfortable clothing, just knowing how to check and care for a young person. But the sex that you're assigned at birth is not necessarily going to be your gender later in life, and it may not be the way you express yourself in ways that are traditionally associated with a sex that's assigned at birth. And remember, I mentioned that there are three different sexes assigned at birth? One of them is also intersex. See down here at the bottom? Sex assigned at birth can be confusing for folks who are born intersex because they are either born with traits that look like both male and female, or that are a mix of both, even on the inside. Now, there are different types of being intersex. Folks that are born with XXY chromosomes or XYY chromosomes, or folks that are born with XY chromosomes that would be normally assigned male at birth, but the hormones kick in differently. We're not really sure why. And so they might have a different presentation. The same thing with people that are XX, who would normally be assigned female at birth. But the hormones that the brain tells the body to produce, that adrenal gland that sends all those hormones out that tell you how to develop, that really are strong during those middle school years, well, sometimes those work differently for individuals. And so they might be a mix of male and female traits, or they might just be in the middle and don't identify with either one. So that's your sex. But your gender is actually different from your sexual identity. Your gender identity can be more masculine or more feminine. It can be intersex or non-binary. It can be genderqueer. I'm different from the way that we conceive gender. So that womanness or that manness, masculinity or femininity, being somewhere on a spectrum in between, or something totally different, that's determined by the brain, not the body. That's how our mind works. And yes, folks who identify as trans, who might have been gendered male at birth or gendered female at birth, but feel like they're more comfortable and happier living as a woman or a man in a different way. Well, those brains do actually look different on brain scans. We're not exactly sure why, again, but in the meantime, we just trust when folks say, I know that my brain and my body don't match up. And so that identity that exists in the brain, that knowing of who you are, that might be male or female or non-binary, genderqueer, and it may be different than the sex that you are assigned at birth based on how your body looks. And then there's also gender expression. Gender expression is the way you present in the world, your clothing, your actions, the way you speak. Now, for a long time, if you wore pants as a woman, it was even law-breaking. For a woman to wear jeans or pants all the way up through the 1930s and 40s was scandalous, and in some spaces illegal. We've gotten a lot more flexible around gender expression. So we can wear t-shirts or pants that might have been considered masculine or feminine in the past, and it's not a huge deal. But there are still some things that we say, oh, if you wear pink or purple, then that must be a more feminine way of expressing yourself. Or if you talk in a higher voice, or if you like to do theater, or if you like to do sports. Well, most of us know by now that there's nothing more boy or girl about liking sports or liking art or liking to read or liking the color pink or the color blue. But there are still some social things that folks will say, oh, that's girly, or oh, that's real boyish. And that's your gender expression. Now, you might be someone who was gendered female at birth. Your gender identity might be a woman or feminine, but maybe you like wearing boys' clothes. Maybe you like having super short hair. That might be your gender expression leans more masculine. And again, that's okay too. And then different from all of that is who you are attracted to. That's something that as we begin to feel attracted to people, develop crushes on people, have the folks that we start dating, maybe even eventually get married to, that's where things like gay or bisexual or pansexual come into play. That's not the same as your sex or your gender. Every gender can be attracted to any different kind of person. And so our attraction and our sex or our identity, not the same thing. So what are all these different sexual orientations that might exist? What happens when we are attracted to someone? And what about these different gender identities? They sound like there's an awful lot of them, don't there? Well, there are. And the list just keeps growing because we keep learning, right? So let's take a look at just a few of the ones that we know of right now. We have these letters that I mentioned earlier, the LGBTQIA plus or LGBTQIA2S plus. Some folks add a P as well. So who is the L? Lesbians. These are women, have a gender identity or a sex of female, and they are attracted to other females. Gay. Gay is most often used to refer to someone whose gender identity or sex is male, who's attracted to someone else whose gender identity or sex is male. But it's also a catch-all word, which means that anyone can be gay if they're attracted to someone who identifies as the same gender as they do. So what about bisexual? Well, bisexual people experience attraction to multiple genders. Some folks prefer the term bisexual, and another term that is under the umbrella of bisexual is pansexual. Because there are more than two genders, it's not just male or female, there's also intersex or non-binary. Then if you're attracted to people just based on their spirit or their personality and not because of their gender identity, you might refer to yourself as pansexual rather than bisexual, which comes from the root word bi, which means two. So bisexual and pansexual are covered under the B. Now, what about the T? Transgender individuals. Remember, our sex is different than our gender. So transgender individuals are those who might have been gendered male at birth, but identify with being female or non-binary. And vice versa, someone who might have been gendered male at birth identifies as female or non-binary. Now, when we change our sex, that usually refers to having some sort of surgery to actually change the way our body looks, or taking hormones to change the way our body looks as well. Things like growing beards, or changing your hair length so that it grows much longer, that your skin changes texture, those things that can be caused by hormones. That's actually changing sex. And you can change that on your driver's license and everything. But there's lots of individuals who don't take hormones and who don't have surgery. And it's just that the gender in their mind, the person who they know they are, is different than the way the body they were born with looks. That's still valid. You do not have to get surgery or take hormone injections or do anything else to change your body and alter your sex to be transgender. Being transgender is about how your mind works, knowing who you are in your mind and your spirit. Also, fun fact, it is considered super rude to ask someone if they have started taking hormones or if they're planning on having surgery. That's pretty personal, and not everyone feels comfortable sharing it in all spaces. So if someone tells you about their hormone journey or their sexual identification journey, then by all means you can listen, ask questions, and be supportive, but it's not something that you should ask someone, particularly in a shared or a public space. unless they've let you know that it's okay to talk about. Now, what about the Q? The word queer. That's a word that we definitely also want to ask before we use for folks, because back all the way up through the 1970s, that was a very insulting word. It was like calling someone the F word, right? It was really hurtful and insulting, and it meant that you were weird. It meant that you were totally different from the norm, that something was really wrong with you. And so for a lot of gay or trans people, they find that word hurtful or harmful. And so we don't say that for them. But some of our younger generation, people that were born in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, or beyond, have started reclaiming it and saying, I don't want to be your normal. And also recognizing that gender identity can change throughout time, that I might get a different understanding than what I have in 1 year or from one class or one worksheet. I just know that I am different from what I was assigned at birth or what the expectations are of me in society. So they identify with the word queer. I actually really like the word queer because what's the difference between bisexual and pansexual? Am I non-binary or am I genderqueer? It's just a lot easier and feels more natural and at home for me to say the word queer and know that I can move and shift inside that identity as I discover myself. But again, that's a word I get to choose for myself. And I let folks know it's okay if they refer to me as being queer. But if I'm speaking to someone else, I'll ask them, do you prefer the word queer or a different word? Or how do you identify? Or how would you like me to identify if I'm speaking to you about your gender or about your sexual orientation? And they'll let you know. Being intersex, we talked a lot about that I for intersex when we were talking about sex assigned at birth. So these are individuals who were born with the genital organs of both sexes. So again, this falls under sex because it is about the genetics and about those chromosomes and about what happens before you're born. And it is about the body, right? And the A is for asexual. It can also be under this umbrella aromantic. So asexual individuals are those who do not have intimate or physical relationships with their partners. They may still have marriages, boyfriends, girlfriends, partners, people that they really adore, close friendships, all kinds of wonderful nurturing relationships. They just prefer not to have the physical intimacy part. And that's okay. There's also folks who are aromantic, which means they love having friends, but they aren't interested in a romantic relationship, whether it is sexual or not. So that means lots of friends, lots of chosen family, but not necessarily a romantic partner or a sexual partner. Now, I also mentioned a couple of letters that are not on this slide. One is 2S, or two-spirit. Being two-spirit is a Native American reality. Two-spirit means that you have both the spirit of masculine and the spirit of feminine that are inside you. It's not necessarily the same as being intersex because it may not be genetic. But for a lot of Native American tribes, that's considered a holy or a spiritual way to exist, because in their concept of God, God has no gender. God simply is all things found in the earth, the air, the spirit, the world around us. And so individuals who have both masculine and feminine energy, that's being more like God. And so it's holy. Let's talk about gender around the world and in other cultures. It's not just America that has gender expansive identities. The Fa'afafine in Samoa have been a third gender since at least the early 20th centuries. The Hijra of India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, the two-spirit individuals of the Native American assorted tribes that exist in North America, Central America, and South America. There's all different kinds of ways that people have understood gender across time and across place. So it's really not as new a concept as we might think, that there might be more to this world and this conversation than just male and female. Gender-affirming pronouns are a great way to show our support and our understanding of recognizing that folks have different ways of identifying and feel comfortable living different ways in the world. Some of the ways we can be most supportive, that is super easy and very common, is by honoring individuals' pronouns. Most women prefer she, her, hers. Most men prefer he, him, his. But there's plenty of folks who might be non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid, gender flexible, who might use she and they pronouns. And you can either use those interchangeably, or they'll let you know in different situations and different spaces, they may prefer a different pronoun in that place or space. There are also what we call neo-pronouns, like z, her, hers, z, zim, ziz. Those come from other languages. Z, zim, ziz, that's actually based on the German. Turns out languages other than English already have gender-neutral pronouns. French, German, we just don't have them in English. So we borrow them, and it's okay to use those if there's something that doesn't feel comfortable in American English. It may take some practicing, and that's what friends and mirrors are for. We can practice and rehearse the same way we learn a new nickname, or we make sure that we adapt for someone who comes from a different culture and maybe has a name we're not used to pronouncing. If we mess up, apologize right away and then actively correct it. And using those corrected pronouns, fixing yourself right in the moment and just keeping going, that will help get it into your head so that you become more and more comfortable and familiar, and then the use will become automatic. Now, what if you want to support an individual who is LGBTQIA2S+, or if they're figuring something out and you're not sure how to help them? Well, of course, there's wonderful resources in teachers, school counselors, and parents. But if for any reason they're not sure what to do, or you're not sure that they're the right person to go to, you can also try a really fabulous organization called the Trevor Project. Now, the Trevor Project is online at the Trevor Project, TheTrevorProject.org. And the Trevor Project specifically works to support mental health for LGBTQIA2S+ youth and young adults 24/7, 365 days a year. If you go to thetrevorproject.org, you can chat, you can use the phone, or you can text to ask questions with trained counselors who understand the challenges that LGBTQ young people face. The text number, 678-678. The phone, 866-488-7386. Or a computer chat just by clicking the link on the Trevor Project page. There's also great resources at thetrevorproject.org where you can learn more about exploring these different topics: sexual orientation, community, gender identity, and mental health, or some of the negative mental health effects that can come if we're not supporting each other and caring for each other. And absolutely, you can also reach out to me. My name's Carla, and just send me an email through talking to any one of your counselors or staff at the school, and they will happily get you in touch with me or with someone else who can help. No matter what you're learning about, what you're curious about, you have plenty of support in this community. A great school and great individuals who are around you and want to be with you.